Hello friends. Today I thought I'd do a little special video because my video for this on Steam Deck has been very difficult to make, mostly because it seems like every time it seems like I'm ready to make a video regarding the performance and how to get it to run properly, I always get some kind of roadblock. Like the performance seems like it's RNG, like sometimes it'll run fine and sometimes it won't, and I have no guidance with this whatsoever, meaning that nobody is helping me with this. I'm just kind of taking settings from other PS3 games that are harder to run and trying to get it to run, but I'm not really having much success. Sometimes I can get 60 FPS capped, and then other times the frame rate just tanks for like no reason, which is interesting because on the Steam Deck there's actually a performance monitor very similar to what we use on PC, like MSI Afterburner, and the Steam Deck is not taxed at all. The processor is not maxed out, and the GPU is not maxed out either, but it still runs like crap. So I'm doing my best to work on that. I think in the meantime, to maintain what little sanity I have left, I'm going to be putting all my Switch Musou games that I have dumped from my legal collection, I'm going to be putting those on the Steam Deck within the next few days, sometime this week. And then I'm just going to put out what I have, and if I find any addendums, I'll just make another video. Those videos have actually been doing quite well, considering, you know, everybody's got low views right now, not just me, unless you do, like, you know, stuff that the algorithm likes. So I'm not really worried about that, but I have put hours and hours into this video already, and it's bore no fruit, so please bear with me. I'll try to get it out this week if I can. If I can get some help from the Steam Deck emulation scene, then maybe I can get some concrete answers. I can say that I got Dynasty Warriors Gundam Reborn to run pretty well, with only like some minor frame drops. So that will be in the video as well. I'll try to get my hands on a couple other games too, but yeah, it should be the last Musou video for the Steam Deck, probably, at least regarding performance. So in any case, today we're going to talk about the state of the Musou genre. You can't really say franchise because there's multiple people that make these games, but Musou has kind of been on a rut lately, and I feel like the main thing that's really been maintaining my interest is playing old stuff like this. Obviously, in the modding scene, we've had some pretty big advances. I personally commissioned a 60 FPS mod for Batride War Genesis. There's also the English patch and the 120 FPS mods for this, which is pretty big as well. And then there's also been the Warriors Orochi 4, Pirate Warriors 4, and Dynasty Warriors 8 120 FPS patches. So on the modding side, things have been relatively alive, but there haven't really been any new games in a while. So I figured I'd just kind of talk unedited about this. I'm not like reading a script or anything. I just kind of talk about it because I know it's been a pretty big subject whenever I play Musou. I've been playing more Musou lately than probably the past year, just because there's been things going on in the modding scene, even if the games themselves, or the genre itself, has been pretty barren. Let's go ahead and put some costumes on here. There we go. Tales of Zestiria had a collab with this game for some reason. I don't know why. Random. Alright. So I guess we'll start with this series, since I'm actually downloading something on Steam right now. But basically, this series could have continued if they had made some smarter decisions, but mostly, if you're not aware, the first Basara was actually brought over here in the name of Devil Kings. And Devil Kings was like the 4 kids, basically bastardization of Sengoku Basara. They tried to like basically deny that the game was in Japan, even though they didn't change any of the assets. You know how back in like the early 90s, early to mid 90s, you know, they would take out like anything in anime that would reference the fact that is, you know, something that was made in Japan, so it has their national things like the food that they eat and stuff, and they would edit it out with burgers and stuff. That's pretty much what they did with Devil Kings. Just somehow, inexplicably, they thought it was a good idea to like, hey, let's take out the things that reference that it's in Japan, even though a toddler could tell that it's in Japan. And it didn't go over too well. People weren't very happy with it. Didn't help that Basara, before the third game, was definitely... I wouldn't really say it was much better than Koei Musou games at the time. Definitely was... He definitely had a little bit more style, and there weren't any clones in the game, too, which helped things, but it still wasn't really as much of a competitor as it became over time. Like, this game, still, to this day, has the best combat in any Musou game ever made. But it didn't start like that. This series definitely had very humble beginnings. Felt like they wanted to do more with it, but I think they were really trying to get like people that aren't hardcore into the games to into video games to really like the series, so they wanted to make it more accessible. But then what ended up happening, of course, was this game caught on with Fujoshi. Fujoshi started playing the game, and then they started expanding with anime and stage plays and merchandise and stuff, and then they kind of realized, well, the people playing the games are mostly sweaty cyborgs. You might as well cater to them, and the rest is history. Basara 3 was a very big, basically revamping of the entire gameplay systems. Pretty much everything was revamped. To the point where they even had to declone characters, which is going to bring me to next part of this discussion, which is basically why there aren't any Koei Musou games right now. You might remember they have not left off Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors, and even by proxy, Orochi, since Orochi is basically just recycled content and assets from those two series. They didn't leave them off in a good spot, mainly because Dynasty Warriors 9 has like dozens of clones, and then also Samurai Warriors 5 for some reason also has a lot of clones, even though it was supposed to be a full reboot. So what's ended up happening is that they have dozens of clones in these games, in their mainline games, and they can't really do anything with those franchises right now, simply because they would either have to start from scratch again, which would be hilariously depressing, mostly because they already did that, and they might have to do that again. But also because it's going to come with the expectations of, like, you know, you're gonna declone the rest of the characters, right? Or you're going to completely redo everything. And the problem is they have too much baggage. They have too many playable characters now. It's just... I feel like people don't really think about why they're not making the games. It's not like they've stopped making money. They still make money, but the bad decisions they made regarding, you know, the content that they put in the games has pretty much screwed over everything else. I've heard some people say that, you know, the clones aren't that big of a deal. You guys don't even play the characters anyway. You know, that's not entirely false. But in this case, it's gotten to the point where it actually is a very major issue. And I'm pretty sure they just don't know how to address it. I feel like if they knew how to address it, then the series wouldn't be in the situation they are in now. You know, Samurai Warriors 5 has the epitome of roster bloat. You know, they have like 40-something characters in that game, right? They have like almost as many characters in that game as the entirety of Samurai Warriors 1 through 4, and then all the supplementary games as well, like XL and Empires, Z, and Spirit of Sanada and everything. But then there's only 15 movesets. So how do you expand upon something like that? You either have to start from scratch again, which would be, you know, nonsensical, mostly because Samurai Warriors 5 was supposed to be a clean slate, or you add them back in incrementally, which is what they did with Basara. That's also what they did the period between Dynasty Warriors 6 through 8. 6 through 8 Empires, they basically decloned everybody over time, and that took a long time, right? That was about, I'd say, 6 6 or 7 years of games, roughly, about that. It was quite a lot of games, you know, incrementally they did it over time, and then, you know, the ironic thing is that they just went back and started from scratch in Dynasty Warriors 9, and of course, every single time that they do that, what ends up happening is that they have to start putting clones in the game again, because the roster has just grown out of control at this point. they don't know how to manage it, and I feel like when they do try to manage it, like, I think that's one of Samurai Warriors 5's biggest failures, is that they tried to get the roster down to a manageable level, but then, you know, they still didn't have the resources to actually have everybody be unique again, so it ends up feeling like a step backwards instead of step forwards. Now, Basara, what they did with Basara is when Basara 3 came out, a lot of people were livid that the characters were gone. You know, your favorite character didn't make the cut. There was no sign that they were going to come back. It was not a good time. But when you actually sat down and played Basara 3, you know, it's like I kind of see what their vision is here. Their vision is they want to make the gameplay better. And the only way that they can achieve that is to not have the baggage of so many characters. Basara has never had clones. You have to wonder if, like, the fact that they don't have clones is like a direct, like, trying to directly compete with the Koei Tecmo games, which are way more popular at the time. You're like, yeah, if we want to compete on the Juggernaut's grounds, we need to actually make it so our series is legit better on paper. Now, everybody got decloned, and most characters got added back in by the time that this game came out, which was about 6 years, I think. I think the Japanese version of Basara 3 came out 2009. This was 2015, and Sumeragi brought back 6 more of the characters. So they brought back almost everybody. They didn't bring back Nohime, they didn't bring back Ranmaru, Itsuki as well. As far as I can tell, that was because her voice actress passed away, so I guess they didn't want to replace her or something, but they brought back pretty much everybody, which I think is pretty commendable given the situation. But yeah, this English patch and the uncapped frame rate has been like pretty much the best thing that's happened with Basara in a very long time. At least for the video game side, it's been pretty gloom and doom, and for good reason. I don't know how many of you watched the 15th anniversary stream, but realistically, people were expecting at least a port, right? You know, like, just port this game, it's great. You know, translate it into other languages so that more people can play it, and then put it on the Switch, which prints money. I think the thing that makes their inability to port this game to Switch even worse is that I'm pretty sure they could have optimized this to actually get it to run at 60 FPS, because this game uses a lot of rendering tricks to make it run at 60 FPS, even on a PS3 of all things, which was very old hardware by this point. Like, these games objectively ran the best out of any Musou game that was on the 7th gen. Like, nothing else ran as good as this. So I feel like if they had put effort into that port and actually got, you know, a good porting team, or they did it in-house, I think that people would have actually bought it, because Musou games on the Switch are kind of a monkey's paw thing. You have a lot of exclusive ones, like the Fire Emblem games and the Zelda Musou games, but they all run like crap. There's really only one Musou game that actually runs well, and that is Fire Emblem Warriors, because that has a performance mode. All the other games don't. So I think this game would have stood out. It's like, hey, this is the only one that doesn't run like garbage. But the 15th anniversary stream was basically felt like a funeral stream. Like, they didn't really announce anything. They announced, what was it, $800 rice cooker and a $2,000 guitar. And then they spent a lot of time talking about Battle Party, which was a gacha game that does not have gameplay like this. I feel like if the game had come out around now or within the last couple years, it probably would have played something like PGR. But yeah, it was pretty much turn-based, face roll, microtransactions, barely any gameplay, everyone's favorite. And I think what makes it worse, the anniversary, they talked a lot about that, which is just something that pisses gamers off, right? You know, like, only the most hardcore gamers are going to be watching those kinds of events, right? You're not going to have the casuals staying up until, you know, whatever time it is in your country to watch something like that. They're not going to care about the mobile game, right? But I think what makes it worse in retrospect is that the game shut down, like, immediately after. It shut down, like, immediately after. It was, like, a matter of a couple months. So it just made it feel like even more of a slap in the face. You know, Diablo Immortal, they still talk about that game a lot when they do, like, BlizzCons and stuff, but, you know, the game is still up, right? It's making money. It's improved over time. But they spent an unhealthy amount of time talking about Battle Party, and then, like, a couple months later, it shut down. Which is interesting, because I actually had some copium regarding Battle Party, and then, like, you know, I forget who it was that they put in there. I think they put Okuni in there or something, and, I had some copium that, like, maybe they're gonna make a new game because she's in there, and everybody else in the game was pretty much from the actual mainline series. But nope, nothing happened from that at all. No port in sight. It was just morbidly depressing. I wouldn't recommend anybody to actually watch that stream. Because it's basically like watching the death of Basara, pretty much. Now, Basara 3 actually did get localized. It got localized as Sengoku Basara Battle Heroes. And for all intents and purposes, it was a great localization. They actually did it right that time. You know, they didn't try to remove the Japanese background of the game and stuff, obviously because Samurai Warriors was pretty popular at that point. Samurai Warriors only had, like, 1 in Extreme Legends out at the time that the first Basara came out, so I guess they figured it was established at that point. People were familiar with the history and the characters and stuff, so we're gonna do it right this time. The problem was, you know how Capcom is. They expect Resident Evil and Monster Hunter numbers from stuff like this, which it's not possible for it to make that much money. They also got, like, union voice actors from LA, which it's like the worst kept secret that American voice actors really don't make much money. They're barely scraping by, but I feel like it still can't have been cheap to get that many people to dub the game like that. So what ended up happening is I think it actually did pretty well for all intents and purposes. I think it actually did decently, but you know how Capcom has the crazy expectations, and I think the fact that they spent so much on the localization didn't help things. They were probably expecting a much higher return of investment, and they didn't end up getting it. Now, I actually played the dub of Basara 3. I actually played it on, I think, Wii and PS3, and it was actually really high quality. I think the interesting thing was that Johnny Young Bosch has voiced Yukimura in both sides now. He's voiced him in Warriors Orochi and Samurai Warriors. Not Warriors Orochi, but Basara and Warriors Orochi. Which is pretty interesting when you think about it. But unfortunately, I think around that time, they should have taken a hint from Koei and be like, you know, hey, we're not going to dub this game. This isn't going to sell enough copies. So we're just going to sub the game, and maybe the series could have continued, but it's very hard to tell. Capcom in that era was making a lot of really boneheaded decisions, like outsourcing beloved franchises to Western and European companies that didn't do it justice. So it's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, the 15th anniversary was pretty depressing, because I felt like, on the video game side of things, they had been handling things pretty well. You know, bringing beloved characters back, improving the gameplay, and stuff like that. Like, prior to Yukimura Den, they were pretty much just putting out bangers constantly. And then it kind of stopped when Yukimura Den came out. Yukimura Den is effectively the end of the franchise. Shortly after that, a couple years later, is when they did the 20th anniversary stream, and just nothing of note really happened. They definitely could have taken a note like, hey, maybe we don't need to dub these. Maybe it's pointless to dub these games, because they're weeb games anyway. Let's see what next level we got here. I actually have to go soon, so I don't know how much more time I have to talk about this. But basically, the gist of it is, they cannot do anything with the mainline Koei Tecmo Musou games at all. They are completely flatlined. And I feel like people don't really think about this, because they put themselves in a position where they have a total of like dozens of clones in both mainline series now. And that comes with the expectation. I think people now are like, you know, we want them all to be decloned at once, which is not possible. But then they've been caught saying, I guess at some point, I don't know what review this was, but everybody keeps parroting this. They keep saying that they don't want to cut characters anymore, which is, in my opinion, a very stupid thing to promise. Because the Dynasty Warriors roster is just out of control at this point, right? There are over 100 characters. Samurai Warriors 5, I think, if they had taken a book from this series I'm playing right now and like, look, we're going to cut these characters. We're going to cut them and like completely revamp the combat and then put them in incrementally over time so that eventually there'll be an almost full roster. Like, almost everybody will come back, and then the combat is better, so it actually feels like a full reboot. They should have done that, but I guess maybe investors or something were like, nah, you gotta put this game out now. And it obviously didn't work. The game was not really well reviewed by critics or, you know, fans that actually play the games. Like, no one really liked the game. It didn't help that I think there was a lot of expectation that the season pass was going to declone characters, and that ended up not happening as well. There's always a lot of talk about how DLC for these games is always such a mixed bag. There's generally like a couple things that are worth buying, and then you know, the rest is just like, maybe if you have like a lot of money you'd buy it. But other than that, it's a complete waste. The Samurai Warriors 5 DLC is just a complete waste. They don't even have any new maps. They did not declone anybody. It just felt like they did it for some contractual obligation. It didn't add anything. I don't know anybody who even bought it. I think it's interesting that they've conditioned us to expect declones in DLC, because they did declone about 9 or 10 characters in Dynasty Warriors 9 throughout the season passes, but then with Samurai Warriors 5, we didn't get that, and everybody usually goes for those, right? People will always go for the weapons, they'll go for the maps, generally, and then anything else after that is kind of dependent on how much you like the game and how much disposable income you have. But yeah, that didn't end up happening, and I think the DLC did poorly as well, so you have to wonder how that's going to affect the future as well. Like, are they actually going to be cutting out more essential parts of the game, like movesets and unique maps and stuff, or modes or anything? Like, are they actually going to start doing that instead of actually putting it in the base game? Because we pretty much gave them the message that the DLC needs to be worth buying, right? Dynasty Warriors 9 had an excessive amount of DLC. It was also way too expensive, but in retrospect, it actually did add a lot to the game. We're talking a bunch of endgame modes that are really fun. I remember doing a lot of those True New Heifei Castle videos. I mean, that felt like one of the only parts of the game that actually felt like a mainline Musou. It felt like really fun. And they added a bunch of other modes as well. They added whole new movesets and everything. The problem was that there was just too much of it, right? There were like 3 season passes, and they were like almost $40 each, which is an insane amount of money for like a $60 game. But it did add a lot to the game in retrospect, and I feel like over time, I definitely felt like I was kind of okay with it, because the price was too high, and it should have just been one season pass. But it did add a lot to the game, and it did fix one of the main problems, right? Is that there was no endgame content. There wasn't really anything in the game actually resembling a standard Musou level, you know, anything from prior Dynasty Warriors 9. And it actually decloned a lot of people as well, which was one of the biggest complaints. But then Samurai Warriors 5 just kind of flatlined, and I feel like now we're probably going to hear about Dynasty Warriors 10 soon, and it's going to be interesting to see like what will actually come of it. Like, are they actually going to fall back on their word and cut characters? And I think that they actually are going to do everything again. The reason for that is when Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires came out, no one got decloned, and historically, for the past couple Empires games, they have decloned characters in those games, meaning Dynasty Warriors 6, you might remember the fiasco where they took the PS2 versions of those movesets. Remember that they did a PS2 backport of Dynasty Warriors 6 right at the time that they wanted everybody to upgrade to play that game. They backported to Dynasty Warriors 6 on PS2, and they added 6 new movesets. So if you didn't have your PS2 anymore, the only way that you could play those characters or those movesets, was to play 6 Empires. And they did that with 7 as well. They decloned, or actually they added Zushu. I think they decloned some characters in that game as well, with the EX attacks with the DLC weapons. Then in 8 Empires, they did the same thing. They took the DLC weapons from Extreme Legends and assigned them to characters and completed the moveset with the EX attacks and the Musos and stuff. With 9 Empires, they did not do that, which leads me to believe that we are going to get yet another revamp. And it'll be interesting to see how they do that, because everybody keeps parroting, oh, they're going to, sorry, it's kind of hard to talk and play this at the same time. They're going to never cut anybody again. I feel like they need to not follow through on that. I feel like cutting characters and actually adding them back in over time, or like making it like some kind of seasonal incremental content kind of game, like not service, but like add stuff to it over time. That's kind of what they do with the Hitman games, I believe, is that they don't come back with everything, but over time it does get added. I think that might be the best way for things to go at this point. But it's anyone's guess, really. So we're just going to go ahead and finish this playthrough. I think I've said my piece. Yeah, Basara is kind of just in an unfortunate spot, because they made a lot of stupid decisions and they refused to expand. And you consider how much more accepting other parts of the world are of Japanese stuff now. I feel like it would have been a prime time to bring this back, but nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. It really felt like I was watching a funeral of a family member when they did the anniversary stream for this.
それではまるで褒美ではないか。まあそれはさておき、次なる種目は、このままただ勝ってはつまらんだ。他の者の侵入を阻んだ勇士には褒美を取らせる。見事してみせよ。いざ承知。
You know, I also have another series I'm very passionate about, which is the Tales series, which has pretty much been going through the same thing. The fans care more than the people who actually own the franchise. And that's pretty much where we're at right now. I mean, fans have fully translated this game. Everything that's a gameplay component has been fully translated. And the people that make the game can't even port it. It's just sad, honestly. 立ちはだかる障壁などうぬが手でみじんに打ち砕いてやれ。面白くもない知れ事だな。征夷大将軍に反目するな。先行くだけお前の終わりが近づくだけだ。足利様のため
敵の力を引き出す。それも我らがお役目。心を震わせる戦、それに出会ったことはあるかね。黒と出るか、赤と。
Likewise, on the tails side of things, fans have fully translated Innocence R. They translated Destiny Remake. They're working on Destiny 2 right now. They're working on Rebirth. It's like, on one hand, it's nice that these franchises are in the hands of the fans now. You know, we've had a lot of advances with mods in the Musou community lately. There's the mods for this, which I'm playing right now, and then also the gameplay mods for Dynasty Warriors 8 XL. There's also the frame rate mods for all the games as well, which you can find videos for on my channel if you're interested. But it definitely sucks when, you know, the people that actually make the decisions and make the games just don't care, or aren't put in a position where they're allowed to care. It's sad.
限ろうではないか。その方にも時代を作り導く資格がある。だが当人にその気がないとは間の抜けた話だ。新時代を滑る資格者など秀吉様ただお一人だ。願物の王が楽しい。友よ、これが天からの申し送りだ。黒き資格をつき大村。
Sorry, I gotta mute the sound really quick because licensed music is gonna play. Alright, there we go. Anyway, that's pretty much the end of the run and the end of this video. I just wanted to say, if you're feeling discouraged about Musou, or if you also happen to be a Tales fan as well watching this, the fans are doing a lot of really good work right now. They've translated games, and they translated this game. The Tales games are getting translated as well, and we also have a lot of frame rate and gameplay mods being made. I do think that it's a self-inflicted problem, the fact that they can't spam as many Musou games as they used to, but at the same time, I hope that this means that we'll get better quality from here on out, and maybe we'll actually have more of a broader future than what it seems like right now, where things are very bleak in comparison. Yeah, I just thought I'd talk about the problems with Musou games right now. Pretty much all sides of them are, besides the collab Musou or the franchise Musou stuff, are pretty much in jeopardy. Like, they can't make any more games, and that's really sad. I think a lot of people think that maybe they're thinking that the games are on a decline. It's not that they're on a decline, it's that the decisions they make when they create the games and when they design the games is on a decline. You know, how are you supposed to expand on something that has like 50 clones? Or in Samurai Warriors 5, it's got like 30 clones or something. It's just hard to expand upon, and then when the games aren't well received either, it probably makes them feel like, how do you expand upon something like that when it's already like maligned? The games are already maligned, right? Do you really want to hold back? Do you really want to stay true to that statement where you're like, you're not going to cut anybody anymore? And it's like, it seems like at this point, judging by the game I was just playing, you can see how roster cuts could be a good thing. The fact that they cut a huge chunk of the roster when they made Basara 3, but then over the next several games, they managed to... Well, they were never really they were never cloned, so they didn't really declone, but when they came back, they were completely revamped, so they might as well be like completely new characters. I think this series has proven that if you can do that over time and have it incremental, and do it in a timely enough manner that people don't feel like things aren't improving, then it can be a good thing. But Koei Tecmo doesn't really seem to want to follow that kind of design philosophy, which is sad, because I definitely remember back when Basara 3 came out, a lot of people were very upset that their favorites were cut and the roster was so much smaller. But then here we are. This game came out in 2015, so almost 10 years ago now, and it still is, to this day, the best combat you can find in any Musou game, with 0 clones. So I feel like they must have been onto something, but Koei Tecmo has just made a lot of bad decisions that they've written themselves into a corner, and I don't know, it's anyone's guess how they're going to get out. So in any case, I'm going to go ahead and make this a premiere. You guys can comment over it while you watch the video, and then leave some comments about what you think as well. Thanks for watching.